Hello and welcome to a PHP tutorial. Today we're going to look at some procedural stuff in PHP and we're going to focus on functions, how we can create functions and how we can use those functions within our procedural code. So in this example today we're going to create a very rudimental product shopping cart where we calculate the VAT against the items that we have in our cart. So the first thing I'm going to do is have an array called cart. And in the cart, we're going to have a single item. So this is an array. The item will be keyed by the item name. In this case, it's Lego Spaceship. And we're going to give it a value of $49.99. And let's save that. So now we have our cart and we can create subsequent items in this cart as well. Perhaps when the user adds the items to the cart, this cart array grows. But what we need to do is calculate the VAT amount against the Lego against each item in the cart. So what we need is some sort of function or some sort of method that we can pass these cart items to that can run this calculation for each one. Now in PHP, in order to create a function, we first need to declare it. So function like this. Then we also need to have a space, and then after that, the name of the function that we wish to declare. So in this case, I'm just going to call this calculate VAT. Now, I would like to mention right now that it's very important to keep your naming conventions consistent throughout your application. In this case, I'm using like camel case notation where we start with a lowercase c and then VAT is uppercase. The reason why V, A and T are all uppercased is because it's an acronym. I could also do VAT like that, but I prefer VAT like so. Now the next thing we need to do is open up some parentheses, and in these brackets here we have the arguments, the parameters, the properties that this function takes. So when we call this function, we can supply some arguments that this function will then use and run from. Okay, so I'll deal with that in a minute. The next thing, or the final thing, to actually set up this this function is the start and the end curly braces. Now again, be consistent with how you do this. You can, for instance, have your starting curly brace on a new line like this, and some people like this, some communities like this. But whatever you do, make sure it's consistent throughout your application, because when you're looking at your code, thousands and thousands of lines of code at a glance, then these small things can really trip you up. Also, when you're working in a team of developers, it's very important to keep consistency throughout the team. Otherwise, you're just going to end up with a lot of messy code. Okay, let's get back to it. So the first thing we need to do is supply this calculate VAT function, the cart, the products that we wish to calculate the VAT against. So the first parameter here is going to be the cart. Now it's actually an array of items, an array of variables, I suppose. So we can actually make sure or ensure that we supply the correct data type to this method, this function, and we do so by adding a data declaration, a data type here, so array, and then the variable that we're going to use is products. Now notice, notice I'm not calling this array cart. I could definitely do so. I could call this cart like so, but it won't be the variable here. It won't be this declared variable. It's a new declared variable, and we're going to call this products. Okay, so we're also going to supply a secondary argument, and that is going to be separated by a comma and a space, and we're going to call this VAT. And this is going to be a default value, so we don't actually need to specify this value when we call the function. And we're going to give it a default value of 20, so equals 20 like so. So let's just save that. And finally, the last thing we need to do is return something with this function. And we're going to return a result, a series of results like so. Now, the return and the function declarations here, these are control flow items in PHP. There are several other control flows such as loops and so forth. I have talked about these before in previous tutorials. I'll leave a link in the description below, as well as a couple of links up here in the YouTube cards. Okay, so the next thing we need to do to actually give the function some contents is actually loop through the products. And we're going to just do a very simple for each loop, so for each products. And again, I've talked about for each loops before, which I will put in a link in the description below. So for each products as product name, so that's the key, and we're also going to get the value out, so product value like this. Okay, so we're going to iterate through each of these items, pulling out the product name, which is this bit here, which is the key, as well as the product value, which is the 49.99 part here. And we're also going to declare a variable called results, because this is the this is going to declare it as a blank array to begin with, and we're going to build up this array as we iterate over these products and calculate the VAT and so forth, and then return the results with when we return the value of this function. So what we need to do is start creating these results. So we're going to do results, and we're going to index the results by the index of the products, so the key of the product. So in this case, it's product name, like so, and we're going to equal that to an array, and that array will have two indexes in. The first will be before, the first key will be before VAT, and at the moment we're just going to equal that to 0, and the second key will be after underscore VAT, like so. Again, keep these consistent as well. Try not to have like before hyphen VAT and after underscore VAT. Keep it nice and consistent throughout your application. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is actually do a calculation against this. In fact, before we do that, we can specify what before VAT is, because that will be whatever's in the cart. So let's just add that as the product value. That's fine. And the next thing here is to calculate the VAT amount. And what we can do is just make some room down here, and we can do VAT amount is equal to a calculation, and that calculation will be the product value, like so. Divide that by 100, because that's going to get 1%, and then we need to times that by the VAT amount. So that's the second parameter that we've supplied here. So VAT amount will be product value divided by 100 times by VAT, and that will give us the VAT amount. So the next thing we need to do is just change this to be VAT amount plus the product value, because we're adding the product value to the VAT, or we're adding the VAT to the product value, I should say, and then we're returning it. So let's just go through that, make sure it all looks right. So we have an array of cart items. Each item has keyed by the item name as well as the value of each product. We've got a function declaration here called calculate VAT, where the first parameter is an array of products, as well as an optional parameter here called VAT. We're declaring a blank array called results, which we are returning here, and then we're iterating through each products. So products, for each products, we're getting out the key, which is the product name here, so Lego Spaceship, as well as the product value, which is 49.99. We're then calculating the VAT amount, so we're creating a new variable called VAT amount for each of these items, where that's the product value divided by 100. That's going to get 100. That's going to get 1%, and then timesing that by the VAT amount, which is 20 by default. And then what we're going to do here is create a results array keyed by the product name, so that should be Lego Spaceship. That is in itself an array where the first index is before VAT, which is just the product value, which is fine because that's just 49.99, as well as the after VAT, so that's VAT plus the product value, and then we're returning the results. So finally what we need to do is I'm just going to do print pre, so it's pre-formatted, print r, and we're going to return a variable called result set. Now I haven't actually declared result set yet, and that's because we need to do result set is equal to calculate VAT, passing in the cart as the first parameter. So we're passing in cart here, and that's going to be the first parameter, and then we're printing that out. Okay, let's just save that and run the file. Let's see what's returned. So PHP tutorial 1. Okay, so we now have this array that's been printed. It's keyed by the name of the product here in the cart, so Lego Spaceship, and we have this adjustment, this VAT before VAT and after VAT. Now we can change all this. We can supply a second parameter here. So at the moment VAT is set to 20 by default. We haven't actually supplied that as a second argument, but we can do so. So we can change that to be 15, for example, and save that. Run this, and we can see that we've adjusted. If we scroll up, that's 59.988, and now that's 57.4885. Now notice that the decimal place is slightly out here. We could round this up, and if we were to do that, we would do, say for example, a floor, like so. Let's save that and then run this again. So now that's been floored to 57. Like I said, this is a very rudimental way of creating a shopping cart. It's just an example to show how we can create functions and so forth. Now let's say we wanted to do another calculation against this, but it wasn't VAT. Perhaps we had a delivery charge against this. What we could do is we could actually do the delivery calculations within the calculate VAT, but then we would change the behavior, the definition of this function, and it's always best to keep these functions, or you keep your functions as small as possible, doing the smallest amount of work as possible and having lots of them. So I'm going to create a new function called calculate delivery, and again we're going to pass in the array of products, and we're going to also put in a delivery charge, and we're just going to do delivery charge. We're going to set that as £2.50 or 2.5, like so. So we're passing in products, and the second argument is also going to be charge, and we're going to set that to be 4.50. Okay, so pretty much like the same one, like the calculate VAT, we need to create a variable called results, and then a loop. And in fact what I'm going to do is just copy this in here and paste that and just change some bits and pieces around. So we're still looping through the products and the product name, and we're getting the VAT amount. We don't need that at the moment. What we could do is change that though to delivery. Delivery cost is equal to product value plus plus and we called it charge, so we're going to plus that to charge, and that's the cost. That's the that's going to be before delivery cost, which is the product value. That's fine. And then after delivery cost, like so. In fact, we can actually just do this on one line like so. We don't need to have that secondary variable declared. Excellent. Okay, so what we've done here is we've created a secondary function called calculate delivery, passing in the products and then passing in a optional charge, and we've set the optional charge by default to 4.50, but we can actually pass that in as something else, so 2.50 for example. Let's just change this. Instead of calculate VAT, let's do calculate delivery, and we're going to remove this here like so, and let's run the file and see what happens. Okay, so now we have the before delivery cost and after delivery cost, and again indexed by the name of the item. In real life, this would probably be an ID, perhaps, to make sure it's nice and unique. And there could also be some bits and pieces in here that says that the delivery costs are charged differently, perhaps if there's multiple items or whatnot. But now we've got two functions declared, but we're only calling them one at a time. Let's say we have a function that just says calculate, and in that calculate function it deals with both the delivery as well as the VAT charges. So what I need to do is create a third function. So we can just call this function, and we're just going to call this calculate, and again we're going to pass in the products. So this is an array of products, like so. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to call both of these functions within this function and then return results like so. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to loop over for each products as product name, and we're going to give this a product value, just as we've done before, like so. And what we're going to do is for each one of these we're going to call these functions, but notice these functions require an array of products. Well, actually what we're going to do is change the definition of these so they actually work on one product at a time rather than all the products together. So what we need is we're still going to return a result set, but we're going to, instead of calling an array, we'll work on delivery first. We will just pass in a product. Like so. Whoops. And we're not looping through the product at the moment, it's just the product amount. So again, actually we could probably change that to be amount, like so. whoops, amount. And so when we remove that, we're still going to return a result set, which is fine, where product cost is the default, and then product cost plus the charge. So that just adds this together, that's fine. And then we return the results. And then the VAT is something slightly similar. So we pass in product cost again in here, and the VAT amount. And again, we don't need to loop over this anymore because it's not an array of products, but we're still returning an array of items where the item is, in fact, we don't need, just going back again, we don't need an index here, that's fine, like so, there we go. Before VAT is the product cost. Whoops. And we've calculated the VAT amount, and we're returning that. Okay, so we've simplified both of these functions. We've done a bit of simplification here. We're only passing in the product cost and the charge in the calculate delivery, and that's just going to return an array where it's the before and after the delivery cost, which is product cost plus charge. And we also have a calculate VAT here, which we just pass in the product cost and the VAT adjustment. And we calculate the VAT amount just by the product cost divided by 100 to get 1% times the VAT amount. So that's as it was before, we've just changed the variable name. And we're returning again an array of results before VAT and after VAT. Okay, so now in this calculate function, we can actually call both of these, and we can do, first of all, let's declare a blank results array like so, and we can do results name, and then we can equal that to an array like so, where the first one is VAT, and that's calculate VAT, passing in the product cost, which in this case is product value, and then also passing in another index. We're just going to call this delivery like so, and that value will be the return of calculate delivery like that. And again, that's product value, not product cost. Save that. Okay, let's just talk about what we've done here. We've removed all of the loops within within these two, the calculate delivery and calculate VAT. So we're only working on a single cost at the time. So these functions now don't have any knowledge of what the product is actually called. It only has knowledge of the cost. So these are just doing calculations. So they're actually the behavior is more like what it's actually described. So calculate delivery, we return an array of before and after costs. Same with the VAT here. The main function here, calculate, just you pass in an array of products. It does a for each of these products, creates a results item indexed by the product name. So I'll just change that like so. And it's creating a nested, a multi-dimensional array where the first index is VAT, and the value of this array element is this here. So this part here will have before VAT and after VAT, and likewise the second argument, the second index delivery will have the return of calculate delivery, which will be the before delivery cost and after delivery cost. And then we're returning the results. So what we can do now is, instead of doing calculate delivery, we do calculate like so. and then we return the product result set. All right, let's clear this down and then let's run it, and hopefully this will work. Excellent. Okay, let's scroll up a little bit so we can actually see it. So now we have a multi-dimensional array where we have three levels down. So Lego Spaceship is the first index. So that's this part here. And then we have two sections, two indexes, VAT and delivery. And inside we have before VAT, after VAT, and before delivery cost and after delivery cost, like so. Okay, so that's a very quick demonstration of functions and how we can use functions. There are other things that we need to consider when creating e-commerce shopping carts. I don't want you to go away thinking this is a production ready e-commerce shopping cart. Certainly not. It doesn't do things like rounding up or rounding down, doesn't do anything like discounts. It doesn't do any calculation of the total of these things. So we're just breaking up the charges for VAT and delivery. But I hope that gives a better some sort of insight as to how we can create functions and use functions within PHP. If you found this video helpful, then please give it a thumbs up. Do share it around. Maybe others might find this useful. Subscribe to get the next PHP and video chats that I do. I'll do a PHP tutorial every Tuesday and a video chat every Friday. So subscribe to get those. Leave a comment in the comment section below if you've got any questions, then let me know, or follow me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @PFWD. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you again shortly.